This story begins with the fact that tomorrow is the qualification evaluation day at the Beast Master Training School. All students have signed a contract for their first beast and must prepare properly today to achieve a good result. Many were nervous, as it was difficult to train as a Beast Master with their current strength. However, some targeted the Imperial Beast Master Academy because they were too self-confident. The main character silently looked out the window and tried to remain calm. He didn't understand how the qualification assessment related to his reincarnation, since he had only transferred to his current body a week ago. So merging with the memory this body carries, he knows what kind of world this is. The era of cataclysm many years ago that brought with it countless evil spirits. People rose up to fight back, and humanity gradually learned to tame animals and use them in battle. The profession of Beastmaster originated and entered the world stage during the era of Imperial Beasts, where beasts became a symbol of status and class. Becoming a Beastmaster means joining the elite of society. And for young people, the biggest dream is to become a powerful Imperial Beastmaster. In this world, all young people over the age of 18 can have their first beast. The higher the soul power, the higher the beast level limit. However, this does not apply to the hero in any way. So before he passed into this world, the previous owner had already managed to conclude a contract. It was a small snowball, which is considered harmless to people, and it seems that it is not even capable of evolving. Everyone around him was too cool, but the guy felt like he was destined to be a scumbag. Suddenly, one of his classmates approached him and said with a grin that if he couldn't become a Beastmaster, he could sit in an office. The others also started making fun of him, suggesting that he sell ice cream at the mall with his snowball. Suddenly, a message appeared in front of Lin Jie's face that the system was in the process of activation and was now officially open. The guy was surprised because so much time had passed, and the system only appeared now. He was noticeably overjoyed because he no longer expected to receive his own system, which would indicate all of his characteristics. He needs to achieve success to get extra points, which can be used to increase the growth of pets. Once its growth reaches 100%, the beast will evolve, and after evolution, the beast's strength level will be increased. At first, Lin Jie doubted that he had any inclination for this, but he had a choice, either the path of a giant or the path of a queen. The guy was sure that Snowball couldn't evolve, but perhaps this was some hidden path of evolution. Looking at his beast, he assumed that he could become a full-fledged Beastmaster. The queen's path sounded appealing, but for the next form, Snowball would need to be at 100% growth, Ice Element at 20, and Soul Jade at 1. Lin Jie decided to try to improve Snowball, and immediately the improvement conditions appeared in front of him, one of which he had already fulfilled. Because of this, the guy received a line in the achievement and 1 soul crystal, deciding to use it on the beast. Once the evolution was complete, Snowball reached level 2, meaning it could evolve further. Lin Jie noticed that the beast had changed somehow, and the system announced that it was now an EF rank. He needs to prepare for further evolution, 20 ice elements and 1 soul jade. Not everyone knows about such a formula before evolution. The boy decided to go get some money and then go shopping, and his classmates decided that he went to sell ice cream. Lin Jie asked his beast to ignore this scum, because tomorrow everything would depend only on him. Upon hearing this, his classmate became angry and asked him to repeat what he said. This guy's family is the second most powerful in the city, and at the moment, he can't stand against him. But there's still time. However, the hero was told that he couldn't even evolve his own beast, and in his place, they wouldn't even go to tomorrow's assessment. Suddenly, a girl approached them and asked Zhang Hao not to be so self-confident. However, the guy was just putting away the trash and was surprised that she was protecting Lin Jie. But the hero only headed for the exit with a smile, deciding that they would soon understand everything. A little later, Lin Jie realized that he had spent all his savings for several months in one trip to the store. Suddenly, Guan Ning caught up with him, as her mother was wondering if he would come to their dinner that day. Having heard an affirmative answer, the girl asked if he would like to be with her for the assessment tomorrow. The boy agreed again, which made Guan Ning happy, and she offered to show everyone what they were capable of. He promised that he would definitely surprise everyone, after which they agreed on the next meeting. While at home, Lin Jie again noticed that the soul jade had cost him a lot of money, and that evolution would cost a lot of money. After that, he handed the crystal to the beast so that it would eat it and begin to evolve. Suddenly, the animal began to increase in size, after which it began to shine with a bright light. A few seconds later, in front of the guy stood not a lump of snow, but a real ice creature. It was a second-rank ice spirit who mastered the ice cone and ice field skills. Lin Jie is a senior in high school, and his pet's average level is at rank 1, It's surprising that it rose to rank 2 so quickly. Suddenly, the ice spirit gently pressed its face against the guy, causing him to immediately feel cold. The cold was getting closer and closer, its strength much greater than he had imagined. If it weren't for the system, Lin Jie would never have thought of such materials to promote Snowball. The amount of spirit stones increases the strength of the soul, and a level of awakening increases the strength several times, and stones that strengthen the body improve its physical form. Using the promotion, Lin Jie increased his stats, gaining 123 achievement points. Now he no longer felt the cold, and deciding to test his strength, he punched the wall. Although he doesn't need to fight personally, physical strength won't hurt in case of danger, and his ability to survive should be increased. At that very moment, he noticed the spirit that had pressed itself against his leg, deciding to use the achievement points. Stretching his arms out in front of Snowball, the boy increased the beast's height to 100%. Now Snowball was 2nd rank and 4th level, and Lin Jie realized that he would definitely be able to surprise everyone at tomorrow's assessment. The next day, Guan Ning asked Lin Jie with a smile if he was ready, and he answered calmly and affirmatively. Noticing his reaction, the girl smiled wider, noticing how motivated he had become. Some girls noticed Guan Ning and didn't understand why she was hanging out with that scum. Some people heard that Zhou Hong confessed to her yesterday but was rejected, and it's unclear why everyone likes her. However, Guan Ning was Lin Jie's cousin and also the school's #1 genius, but not everyone liked her. Guan Ning wondered if her brother was really going to participate with Snowball, but he answered too confidently. Then she grabbed the guy tightly by the neck and declared that if they passed, it should be celebrated. The girl pressed her chest against him, which embarrassed him, and also suggested going to a cafe. At that very moment, some guy called out to them, and his sister said that Guan Ning had taken her boyfriend away from her. Guan Ning indifferently asked who she was and who her boyfriend was, and in response, she heard the name Zhou Hong. However, she was not interested in this guy at all, so she turned him down. The upset girl couldn't believe her words, because Zhou Hong had gone to her. Guan Ning decided to leave, but the abandoned girl's boyfriend immediately grabbed her by the shoulder, claiming that she had offended his sister. When she asked him in a rude tone to remove his hand, the guy got angry and swung his fist at her. But to everyone's surprise, his fist was intercepted by Lin Jie, who glared menacingly at the offender. The girl standing to the side asked her brother to stop fooling around, as Lin Jie was just a weakling. But to prove otherwise, the hero swung his knee sharply, hitting his opponent in the stomach, throwing him back several meters. Approaching the guy, Lin Jie introduced himself as Guan Ning's older brother, and if he needed anything from her, he would have to go through him first. Standing to the side, Guan Ning was surprised and tried to understand where her brother got such strength from. But Lin Jie was just as surprised that he had become so strong in such a short period of time. But even in spite of such a sudden blow, his opponent rose to his feet. Without wasting any time, he summoned his wolf beast, which was rank 2 and level 1. Despite his inevitable defeat, the boy considered the high school students pathetic and wanted to demonstrate the power of the Twilight Wolf. Guan Ning's beast was only at the 1st rank of the 7th level. The chances of victory were extremely small. But there was no way out. She held her hand out in front of her, intending to summon her beast to try and protect herself and her brother. Suddenly, Lin Jie stood in front of her, and the girl immediately guessed that he wanted to use Snowball. The guy explained that if she got injured, it would affect the final grade, so she should rely on him. The bully's younger sister laughed because Lin Jie had the worst results in the entire school, and he definitely couldn't beat her brother. Without wasting any time, the elder sent his wolf into battle. But suddenly, a bright light shone in front of him. The next second, the wolf's body was completely frozen. To Guan Ning's surprised look, Lin Jie explained that Snowball had evolved while the wolf's master was trying to unfreeze him with orders. Now Snowball had a name, Ice Spirit, and in that very second, she destroyed the wolf's frozen body. Zadira couldn't believe how the beast of an ordinary 1st-rank 9th-level disciple could kill his 2nd-rank wolf. He didn't think that Lin Jie's beast would be stronger than him, so he decided that they had to leave. However, Lin Jie sternly explained that no one had given them permission to escape, which frightened his opponents. Realizing that there was no other way out, the blonde immediately approached him and bowed low, beginning to apologize. Lin Jie made it clear that they didn't need to apologize to him. He immediately realized his mistake and began to apologize to Guan Ning, and asked to spare them for the first time. His younger sister tried to say something, but the guy immediately hit her and ordered her to apologize. He did this out of fear as ice spikes were aimed at him and his sister, but Lin Jie let them go. After they escaped, Guan Ning began to praise him, asking how he was able to deal with a 2nd-rank Twilight Wolf. She found it hard to believe that Snowball had actually evolved, and the boy stroked the ice spirit's cheek. After that, they went to the Imperial Beast Association building, where they stood in front of a huge stele. This is the last qualification exam this year. Some will lose their Beastmaster qualifications forever, and some people will successfully enter the Royal Beast Academy and enter into a new life. At that very moment, a man entered the hall and invited everyone who wanted to take part in today's exam. Once everyone passes the test, they will receive a small bronze medal with the words low, medium, high, and super engraved on it. They need to choose a challenging task to face, and the more challenging it is, the bigger the rewards. The lowest level added very few stats, but the higher the difficulty, the more noticeable the improvements became. Many students immediately set their sights on the high level, although even after passing the lower one can become a beast master. Guanning immediately began asking her brother what he would choose, until the man decided to add something before choosing the difficulty. Their future will depend on this, so they must choose wisely, combine their forces, and choose the difficulty that suits them. As a result, the majority of students chose the lower and middle levels, while only one person each had their eye on the high and super levels. Many began to mock this daredevil because they were sure that this man had definitely signed his own death warrant. Looking at Lin Jie's medal, Guanning realized that her brother had indeed chosen the super level, and if he failed, he would not be able to apply this year. The guy asked her with a smile not to worry, because he knew his limits, but others doubted his strength. At that very moment, the examiner approached him, deciding that the guy had not heard what he had said, and repeated to choose wisely. However, Lin Jie stated with a serious face that this decision was made after careful consideration. The man could hardly believe that this guy could actually pass the super level. Lin Jie looked presumptuous to him, but if he wanted to play with fire, no one would stop him. And once everyone had made their choice, the examiner loudly announced the beginning of the exam. At that very moment, the stele began to emit green light, and all the students were enveloped in a field. Their bodies were transported to the steel world, and Lin Jie found himself in the middle of a deserted arena. Any injury received in this dimension will not affect the true body. After warming up a bit, the guy realized that everything was fine and he could begin. At that very moment, the system announced to him that he had his first victory over the Twilight Wolf, and Lin Jie was glad that he could see the system even here. He received a point in the achievement and 1 soul stone, which he will spend on the ice spirit. And Snowball's stats immediately increased by 1 point, and his growth increased from 24 to 44%. A few minutes later, a first-rank 7th level fire toad warrior came out against them. Looking at the small monster, Lin Jie doubted that it was definitely a super high level. The monster began to attack them with fire, but the ice spirit immediately used needles to protect itself and its master. The warrior froze immediately, which meant that the first stage of 5 had been completed. The test continues, and suddenly a ghostly monster, a first-rank, 9th level necromancer, comes out from behind the door. For other people, the first rank of the 9th level is a very serious task, but for him, it's just child's play. The examiner observing him decided that the guy had just been lucky last time, but now the real test would begin. However, Lin Jie easily passed the second stage, after which a second-rank, 2nd level wood element wood monster came out to him. The man didn't believe that the boy could handle a second-rank, 2nd level monster, and he didn't have much time left. The monster had very thick tree bark, and it could withstand even the icy spikes. The monster immediately pierced the ground with its paw and released its roots to launch a surprise attack and grab Snowball. The examiner was sure that, although Lin Jie stood out among the newcomers, he would not advance further, but suddenly, the ice spirit used the sphere to break free from the monster's grip. She then sent ice spikes at him, which pierced the monster's hand. With each passing second, their number grew, and when the last 3 spikes pierced the monster's back, it fell to the ground. The challenge still had 2 levels left, and some players began to return to their world after failing. Many didn't expect the 5th level with easy difficulty to be so difficult, but then all their attention turned to Lin Jie and the 2nd rank beast that appeared at this stage. They knew that this guy was going through a super level and had already passed the 4th stage. At this time, Guanning also managed to pass the test and returned, wanting to quickly find out how her brother was doing. But suddenly they saw a 2nd rank, 5th level saber-toothed lion begin to head towards the guy. The players found this too cruel, as a newbie would hardly be able to cope with it. Lin Jie decided that he finally had a worthy opponent, and Snowball began to attack the lion, but he quickly dodged the spikes. The examiner recognized the boy's strength and decided to see how far he could go. Although the ice spirit is higher in rank than the lion, the strength between beasts does not only depend on rank, but but also needs to consider characteristics, condition, environment, and strategy. The ice spirit has already entered a weakened state due to 4 continuous battles, while the lion, on the contrary, is strong in one-on-one combat. He has more speed and strength than Snowball, so it will most likely turn out to be a difficult battle. At this rate, they might lose, but it's worth waiting a little longer and trying to defend themselves. As soon as the lion got as close as possible, Snowball used her ice spikes, thus managing to deal with the strong opponent. No one could quite understand what had happened, and at first they thought they had a draw. But then they noticed how the lion began to slowly rise. The examiner guessed that Lin Jie's beast was also no lower than the 2nd rank of the 5th level, like the lion. And in his opinion, the guy was hiding well. At that moment, the lion roared loudly, and Snowball prepared for a new attack. The lion is an animal from extremely cold regions, so it has enormous resistance to cold. This was not playing into their hands. But suddenly, Lin Jie received a system notification about a new achievement. Due to the large number of skill uses, he opened the pet skill unlock function. Now, he could use more skills. Normal pets have no more than 2 main skills, but the more of them, the more combinations. Ice spikes, as the main damage, is highly dependent on control. The ice area is large, but the damage and control are not enough, and now he needs control skill. The moment the lion started running towards them, Lin Jie unlocked the ice chains. He spent 50 points on this, and spent the rest on upgrading Snowball. The players watching him couldn't believe the transformation taking place before their eyes. No one has ever seen the guy spend anything. Even combat experience accumulates after a victory, and it's unclear where he gets the points to increase his rank. Many considered this to be cheating, while Lin Jie ordered Snowball to use ice chains. At that very second, the lion was chained and tried to break the shackles, but it was too late. The ice spirit used his thorns to deliver the finishing blow. The examiner didn't understand why his pet could use 3 skills, but the lion was still standing. But after a couple of minutes, he successfully passed the super-level difficulty assessment, and Guan Ning screamed with joy. The players couldn't believe that Lin Jie had passed, thinking that he had definitely bribed the examiner. The man had seen many young rulers with outstanding talent, but this was the first time he had seen such unperturbed guys. Meanwhile, Lin Jie's constitution increased from 2 to 5, and his spirit from 2 and 8 to 7 and 8. It was not for nothing that they called it a super-level test, as the increase in strength is truly impressive. At that very second, the system announced to him that he could enter into a contract with the 2nd beast. Once the reward was received and the training was completed, the boy began to exit the test. As soon as he appeared in his world, he noticed that he was surrounded by stunned players. Everyone immediately pounced on him and began asking how he managed to do it and where he got such an animal. Besides this, Guan Ning pounced on him, praising her brother because she knew that he would succeed. The examiner also decided to take back his words, his confidence coming from his strength, not from impulsiveness and recklessness. The others were shocked that the examiner was apologizing to the student. For them, this was something new. The man invited Lin Jie to join their association and get a management position with a good salary and benefits. First, he will graduate from the academy and then go straight to them, even though the competition is quite high. Guan Ning advised her brother to agree, since even the best students had to take the exam to join the association. If you agree now, you won't have to pay for tuition at the academy. But the more you receive now, the more you will have to give in the future. And besides, there are too many restrictions in the association. Lin Jie thanked the man for the offer, but he had already made up his mind and would think about his offer after completing his training. One of the students tried to offer himself in place of Lin Jie, but the examiner didn't even look in his direction. At Lin Jie's current growth rate, after graduating from the academy, he would be 100 times stronger and would be able to extract much more from the association than he could now. But the man decided not to force him. And if the guy needed something or changed his mind, he could find him at any time. As they walked out of the building, Guan Ning was immediately called out by Liu Siqi and Zhang Xiaoyun from the neighboring classroom. The second one immediately ran up to Guan Ming and, taking her hands, began to ask for her brother's contact information. Liu Siqi personally asked Lin Jie to add her as a friend. They had been watching him for a long time and suggested hanging out together in the future. The boy smiled uncertainly and stated that they had other things to do, noticing how much their behavior irritated Guan Ning. But suddenly, Lin Jie received a message on his phone in which the teacher asked him to come see him. A little later, he was met in the office by a woman who already knew that he had been able to pass the super-level test. Suddenly, she jumped up and hugged the guy tightly because she believed in him. Lin Jie remembered how the teacher always chased him away, but now she called him to tell him something. It was a book that contained the basic methods and techniques of training the spirit. One of the required subjects for Beastmaster training? It's best to start practicing early. Soul magic, besides pets, is the main combat tool of the overlords. Soul training can allow lords to slay beasts without relying on their pets, using only soul magic. It can be used in battle along with pets. It can provide protection during battle so that the Beastmasters do not get hurt. Lin Jie happily thanked her and decided to start studying right away, which satisfied the teacher. When the guy returned home, the first thing he did was start studying the book, stumbling upon the protection of the soul. He wanted to learn the basics first and then have more time to study more advanced courses after entering the academy. 10 minutes later, he managed to create a protective barrier. It would take ordinary people days or months to master soul magic, but it took him so little time. The system rewarded him for mastering soul magic by giving him 100 achievement points. He decided to spend 50 points to improve soul protection, realizing that the system also affected soul magic. Lin Jie didn't expect to receive so many achievement points and decided to immediately improve his defense skills by 2 levels. It was already felt that the protection had become stronger, and the shield could cover 3 or 4 people. Every time you use soul protection, you need to spend about 10 units of soul power, and his current 780 units of power allowed him to use the protection 78 times. However, the boy never had time to use the stone he received as a reward for his achievements. Thanks to him, his soul increased from 7.8 to 8.8, and the strength of his soul increased from 780 to 880. It was a bit wasteful to spend such a large amount of energy just on protective shields, so it was necessary to learn a couple more skills. Among other things, Lin Jie came across the Spirit Arrow and Spirit Shockwave skills. Having learned these skills, he decided to test them in action. Although the force was not great, it was very accurate. Then he decided to try another skill, and after spending 30 units of soul power, he was able to punch through the wall with his fist. As a reward for learning 3 types of magic, the guy received 1 Spirit Restoration Potion, which was very useful. He then decided to immediately upgrade the Spirit Arrow and Shockwave to the 2nd level. He had to save the remaining achievement points just in case. Tomorrow he would earn money and buy a second pet. The next day, at the quest center, Lin Jie accepted a money-making quest for the first time. With his current strength, it wouldn't be difficult. Without thinking twice, he decided to choose the task with the highest reward, clearing out the furry bugs in the canyon. But since his current status is that of a trainee, for security reasons, he was assigned 3 team members, and the reward will be divided equally. A little later, he arrived at the canyon, where he was met by 3 strangers. Zhang Lei said they waited for him for half a day, but it turned out he hadn't even graduated yet. Zhao Mingshan also didn't understand how they ended up with the graduates, but Wang Zhujun asked him not to yell at him. The girl turned out to be the friendliest and asked the guy to just follow her. Lin Jie replied with a smile that he had not yet completed his training, so he would rely on them. Zhao Mingshan asked them to be more serious, as this task might be more difficult than they thought. He is the acting leader of this team, so they must follow his instructions, and he will also reduce Lin Jie's share of the reward. These guys never made it into the academy, so they graduated and started making a living by completing missions. At first, Lin Jie was hesitant, but then he agreed with a smile to work honestly, because more work means more earnings. After walking some distance, they came across a hole in the ground, inside which was a swarm of beetles. All they needed to do was block the cave and destroy the beetles, so they began to release their animals: a rhinoceros, a praying mantis, and a bee. Lin Jie first decided to look at his team's abilities and then make a decision. Zhao Mingshan immediately sent the rhinoceros forward, which began to make a path, and the others rushed after it. Zhang Lei thought that the 3 of them were a perfect combo, but Lin Jie saw that their attacks were no threat at all. Suddenly, everyone heard some strange sounds and tried to understand what was happening. At first, the team thought that someone had come out of the cave, but then they realized that the beetles had called for reinforcements. As it turned out, there were more monsters in the cave, and with their huge numbers, they began to defeat the animals. The mercenaries wanted to call the beasts back, but this strange sound had a paralyzing effect. Suddenly, Zhang Lei grabbed Lin Jie by the lapels, as he knew and did not tell them anything. However, the hero stated that now they need to worry not about their pets, but about their own safety. Noticing the swarm of beetles heading their way, Zhao Mingshan gave the order to retreat, realizing that this was a mission of some kind of transcendental level. He started to run away, and the bugs almost managed to get him, but Lin Jie activated the protective dome in time. Zhang Lei didn't expect to see soul magic in action, as this technique was only known in the academy. Lin Jie decided not to answer and asked him to just stand behind and not disturb him. After this, the guy immediately summoned the ice spirit to deal with the bugs himself. The team didn't understand what kind of pet it was, as they had never seen anything like it. If these monsters are of the same rank as normal pets, then they are somewhere around rank 7, and their main advantage is numbers. They don't have any intelligence nor any skills, but his third-rank ice spirit has just the right techniques. Snowball immediately began freezing the bugs, giving the rest of the team time to recall their pets. But they will have to give up their awards, which leaves the entire team in shock. Zhao Mingshan agreed to give him all the rewards just to get his pets back. Zhang Lei was angry that the guy dared to threaten him, and he imagined himself to be that same Lin Jie, the legendary candidate who had passed the extremely difficult test. But he only looked menacingly in his direction, declaring that he was Lin Jie. Wang Shujun knew that an ordinary high school student couldn't have such power, so she asked the boy to save their pets. However, Zhang Lei doubted that he was telling the truth, but still asked to unfreeze their pets and return them. But his speech was immediately interrupted by Zhao Mingshan, who punched him in the face with all his might. The leaders said that the guy had already shown his strength and that there was no need to prove anything else, but they were too blind. There is little time left and the ice will soon melt. They must quickly return their animals and leave before the flock of beetles wakes up. Wang Shujun wondered what he would do, since these beetles were immortal and had only been temporarily immobilized. However, Lin Jie only smirked, adding that he was going to capture the leader. Zhang Lei didn't expect that this guy wanted to go deep, but Lin Jie had already jumped into the pit and asked the others to hurry. It was dark inside, but you could still see everything. It seems that improving your physical fitness affects your vision. At that very moment, the bugs began to attack him, but the spirit barrier successfully protected the guy. He couldn't fight them off for long, as there were too many of them. Even if he had a large supply of spiritual strength, he still wouldn't have been able to withstand them. Suddenly, Lin Jie discovered that he had new achievement points. Then he decided to learn all the skills, and Snowball studied the ice shield and the new star, the icy comet. With the ice shield, Snowball could act freely and no longer needed its protection, and the star was suitable for dealing damage over a large area. But first, the surrounding ice element had to be collected, and this could be used in conjunction with extreme frost. By activating the spiritual shield, the boy was able to gather the ice element to use the new comet ice star. In one fell swoop, Snowball destroyed 50 beetles, and this skill seemed too powerful to the guy. The pet can gain experience through battles and can also level up, albeit slowly, but there are a lot of bugs, so this place has become an excellent training ground. Perhaps today the ice spirit would be able to break through to the next stage, as the progress had already reached 89%. Suddenly, he heard someone's roar in the depths of the cave, and decided that the king had appeared. Meanwhile, outside, Wang Shujun suggested that they hurry and report the danger of this mission. Zhang Lei didn't understand why she cared about this boy, since he went there himself. Suddenly, another guy appeared behind them, Loda, who wanted to know if this was the location of the mission dedicated to bugs. Zhao Mingshan replied that the target was in front of him, but he must be careful and not go there. Suddenly, the whole team was surprised to discover that he had a bronze Beastmaster badge. The association noticed the change in the difficulty of this mission, so they sent him to sort out the mess. Wang Shujun was confident that they would definitely cope with him and already wanted to go together. Gently taking her by the chin, Loda decided that his little sister wanted to watch his performance, so he gave her permission. However, he did not give the go-ahead to two guys, although they themselves did not want to go anywhere. At this time, Lin Jie received the achievement Conqueror of 100 Beasts, receiving 300 achievement points and a growth acceleration card. It was surprising that such achievements existed. Perhaps it meant the same thing as killer of hundreds of people. Snowball had been promoted to rank 3, level 3, and the boy was one step closer to improving her. The guy realized that it was time for the boss to go out, and at that very second, a huge beetle appeared in front of him. According to the mission details, the mantis crisis began a week ago, meaning the monster has recently evolved. At that very moment, the invader mantis roared, and Lin Jie noticed that it was a 4th rank 1st level mantis. He understood that if he ran away now, he wouldn't get a penny, so it was all or nothing. Suddenly, the ceiling above him broke through, and a stone golem entered inside, and with it, Loda. Wang Shujun, who jumped down last, noticed Lin Jie and was glad that he was safe. The guy didn't understand why she came back, and Loda asked him to retreat because it was too dangerous, and there was no place for him here. The Mantis Invader is a legendary king of the tens of thousands of mantises. only one ferocious beast of the 4th rank appears. But Lin Jie stopped him and asked him not to interfere as he came here to complete a task, and this boss belongs to him. Loda realized that he didn't know who he was, so he introduced himself as the Bronze Beast Lord, while this golem fought the praying mantis. But at that very moment, Snowball used ice chains, and Lin Jie introduced himself as a trainee beastmaster. The bronze ruler immediately recognized him and explained that he himself had undergone an internship, survived hundreds of battles, and then tests for a bronze medal. Lin Jie half-heartedly declared that he would also go, and Wang Zhujun asked them not to quarrel as there was danger behind them. The boss was able to break free from the shackles, while Loda decided to show the guy the difference between them. He then used Spirit Magic Enhancement, and the Stone Giant's current strength became rank 4 of the 2nd level. Using the skill Rumble of Stones, he was able to knock down the monster, immobilizing it. The ability to comprehend and strengthen high-level magical skills is not something that everyone can do. But suddenly, the boss jumped up and used his horn attack on the golem, entering a state of rage. Then, Lin Jie and Snowy rushed forward using ice chains and a spirit blade. The monster withstood the blow and wanted to attack the guy, but he used an ice shield, and the stone golem grabbed him from behind. When the boss threw the giant away, Wang Zhujun screamed that they had to leave because the beetle was too strong and they could die. Loda agreed with her and decided to spare him today, but he had to think about what to do next. However, Lin Jie asked them to leave, deciding to finish him off himself. Loda was dissatisfied with his decision, because the boy himself saw that even the strengthened stone beast could not do anything to him. Lin Jie remembered how he had just said that the difference between them was that he had mastered an advanced strengthening technique. Loda confirmed his words, but did not fully understand what the guy had in mind. Lin Jie then used the explosive seed card to strengthen himself and Snowball. The Bronze Lord couldn't believe that he also possessed the enhancement technique and asked him not to joke. A look of shock immediately appeared on his face, as he didn't understand who Lin Jie was. Combined with his auxiliary technique, the seed only allowed him to use the enhancement for a minute. But that should have been enough. At that very second, Snowball used super powerful ice chains. As the ice spirit's level increases, the skill power becomes much stronger than before. But it's unlikely that you'll be able to control the boss for too long. It was time to increase his power, so Lin Jie attacked him with his spirit power. But if he continues to use spiritual power, depleting his life energy, it will lead to death. Lin Jie chose to use only half of his spiritual power, causing Luoda to be shocked again. Wang Shujun also couldn't believe her eyes, as he might be able to defeat the monster. The next second, Snowball used Ice Star, pushing the monster away from her. No one could figure out what kind of power this was, and it was no wonder they never saw the remains of this boss. Once upon a time in the ancient era, during the war between gods and beasts, humanity gathered the 5 greatest elemental divine beasts to end the chaos. Since then, these 5 greatest beasts have disappeared without a trace, and perhaps one of them is now in Lin Jie's hands. At this time, the guy had 30 seconds of power-up left, so he decided to finish. Together with Snowball, they dealt the final blow, and then the boss was defeated. Wang Shuzun shouted joyfully, but Loda couldn't imagine that this brat would take all the credit for himself. The card's effect wore off, causing Snowball to become tired, for which Lin Jie praised her, and her level was raised to rank 3, level 5. Progress has reached 100%. Only materials for evolution are needed, but it's better to wait until she rests. The system rewarded him with 500 achievement points, a resurrection potion, and a high-quality ice crystal. Suddenly, Loda put his hand on the guy's shoulder and offered to talk. He wanted Lin Jie to pass on the credit for killing the boss to him. Wang Shujun didn't understand how he could say that since Lin Jie had done all the work, but he had promised to pay 100,000. Since the guild sent him to solve this task, the grade for it will change. This will affect his rank and promotion, so he has a vested interest in the outcome of the task. For Lin Jie, money was more important, and he could buy himself a nice new pet. But he couldn't agree right away. 100,000 is Lode's half-year savings, and the sum for completing this task is 50,000, and thus he will be able to earn twice as much. But besides this, Loda promised to be indebted to the guy, which is why he immediately agreed. As soon as the money arrived in Lin Jie's account, they heard a strange sound and looked up to see a huge hawk. At that very second, a man who was the examiner came down into the cave towards them. Wang Zhujun noticed the silver badge on him, not believing that she had personally seen the legendary Silver Beastmaster. Lin Jue greeted him, and Loda couldn't believe that the guy knew Mr. He. The man noted that the task had been successfully completed, and Loda explained that he had sorted it out and no one had been hurt. He guessed that Lin Jie was smarter than Lode, and that they could probably deal with the monster together. This was his second mistake due to the association of Master's carelessness in assessing the mission. It resulted in the medium difficulty mission being downgraded to a normal level. Such carelessness might lead to a loss of trust on their part, but he hoped that they could forgive him. Lin Jie explained that Luoda had protected them, and Wang Shujun was surprised that this was the man with high intelligence. He explained that to compensate for the failure of this mission, the association would pay him 100,000 as compensation. Loda couldn't believe how lucky the guy was, and Lin Jie decided to gladly accept the money. This is not just compensation and payment for silence, as refusal can create problems. This kid hasn't gotten his second beast yet. It's not clear that he needs money, so he decided to invest in him. The money had already been transferred, and the man hoped that Lin Jie would be able to manage it well. In the future, if he needed help, he could contact the association. Then he grabbed the monster tightly and threw it over his shoulder, dragging it towards the exit as if it weighed nothing. When the team got outside, Loda couldn't believe that Lin Jie had received a whole 200,000 and earned the command of another person. After Loda left, Wang Shujun said that she didn't expect to meet two talented people today, and that the day had definitely not been wasted. She also has to train hard to become stronger. Only then can she become as cool. After listening to her, Lin Jie smiled and said goodbye, wishing her good luck. The money he received should be enough to buy a B-rank beast. Arriving at the pet store, he was greeted by a sweet employee who showed him inside. There were many display cases in the room containing various animals. Lin Jie noticed that it was an ordinary B-rank beast shop and didn't find anything outstanding. Around him were various animals, plants, and even elemental monsters. But despite his hidden evolution, he was no match for a royal-level pet like Snowball. The girl noticed that this flaming devil was considered an elite B-rank pet, very rare and worth only 16 million. However, for this money, all the materials for evolution are included, but the guy decided to look further. Snowball was originally an F-rank pet that couldn't even evolve, and the knowledge and experience of the association's experts are not accurate. Suddenly, the system announced that a king-level beast with hidden evolution had been discovered. The boy was surprised and immediately noticed a stone golem, which turned out to be all too familiar to him. The normal evolution line increases strength and defense, and the beast becomes huge, possessing high resistance to most elements. The hidden line of evolution pursues the evolutionary path of ancient bloodlines, revealing a supernatural deity. It was no wonder that this beast was familiar to him. The huge beast of Lode was the result of the evolution of this cute little creature. But that's just the normal path of evolution. He never thought that this guy had the potential to evolve into a god. The ice puppet's strengths are explosion and control, making it a mage type, whereas the stone golem is a warrior type. The girl also began to offer to take it, because this golem is the choice of many people. It can resist, fight, and is easy to evolve, and also very cheap. Lin Jue agreed to take it for 80,000, and he also needed to buy some materials for evolution. But upon hearing the name of the ingredients, the girl noticed that these materials would not allow him to develop, and the essence of a mid-level element was quite expensive. However, the guy was confident in his choice, and stated that he was not buying them for himself. The materials cost much more than the beast, and he only had 20,000 left in his account. After receiving the seal pearl, Lin Jie made a pact with the second beast, receiving 300 achievement points. A little later, while at home, he immediately decided to level up the stone golem. First, you need to increase his growth progress to 100% to continue. This little one looks a bit silly, but who would have thought that he has a hidden path to the evolution of a divine beast? Now he needed to eat all these evolutionary materials, and then he would be able to evolve. The golem immediately pounced on one of the ingredients, but there was still some powder left that he had not eaten. But he didn't want to eat it, and the guy started complaining that he had spent a lot of money buying all this. Finding no other way out, Lin Jie summoned Snowball, who glared menacingly at the golem. He noticed that her recovery was going well, while the golem tried to attack her, but was immediately hit on the head. Without a choice, the animal ate the powder, and its growth progress reached 100%, after which it was seeded with black light. A second later, a second-rank, 9th-level stone demon appeared in front of the guy. Lin Jie smiled, realizing that Luoda didn't know that a stone demon could become like this. Suddenly, the demon decided to demonstrate his skills and created stone spikes in front of himself, attacking Snowball. Lin Jue was shocked that they destroyed his wall, but he does not listen to his orders and acts on his own, so he decided to show him how to behave. The ice spirit had reached the necessary conditions for evolution, so the boy decided to show the demon who was boss. At that very second, Snowball began to change shape, which surprised the stone demon. Ahead appeared an adult girl, Snow Maiden, 4th rank, 1st level. All of her skills were improved, and her appearance was noticeably more fearsome. Standing in place, she extended her hand in front of her and began to freeze the demon's legs. She then created hovering spikes above the stone beast, and it simply surrendered, falling to its knees before her. Once the guy signed a contract with him and became the master, he must obey him. But if his character is not corrected, he does not mind killing him. Therefore, Lin Jie decided to ask him again. Would he obey? The stone demon immediately stood up and began to bow, while Snegorochka removed her thorns. Suddenly, someone knocked on his door, and when Lin Jie opened the door, he noticed a huge man who wanted to know what he was doing in the middle of the night. And this was not the first or second time, so the man demanded compensation for moral damages, at least 30,000. He added that he would wait for them for 3 days, while Lin Jie spent all the money on supplies. But suddenly, a stone golem appeared next to them and swung its fist towards the man. His palm stopped a centimeter from the throat, while the frightened neighbor tried to find out what kind of monster it was. Lin Jie apologized for the poorly behaved beast, deciding to ask again about the compensation. The man shook with fear and decided to refuse the money, as he was not that petty. A little later, they went to bed. Lin Jie slept with Snegorochka, while the golem settled down on the floor next to the bed. The next morning, Lin Jie jumped in fright when Snow Maiden handed him the ringing phone. Guan Ning reminded him that today was the entrance exam for the Beast Master Academy. Lin Jie was shocked because he had completely forgotten about it, and his sister rudely hurried him. As soon as the guy arrived at the place, Guan Ning immediately met him and waved her hand. Noticing him, the other students were unhappy because he could be late for such an important matter and thought too highly of himself. However, the serious look didn't help the guy, as the teacher quickly caught up with him and hit him in the face, realizing that the guy had overslept again. But then she suddenly calmed down and decided to find out if he had trained well in the art of the soul. After the conversation, the teacher called everyone over, noting that this time, entering the academy would be more difficult, but she hoped that they would do their best. They should not overdo it, whether they pass or not, because they will still be good students for the teacher. But most of all, she hoped that Lin Jie could become the hope of her middle school. While on the bus, Guan Ning wondered what her brother had been up to lately, since she kept sending him a message and he didn't respond. He had been too busy lately and forgot to look at his sister's message, explaining that he had been busy with missions. The girl boasted that her demonic bird had also successfully evolved. The guy was happy for her, adding that there would definitely be no problems with admission this time. And when they arrived at the big city, Guan Ning immediately leaned towards the window, pressing her chest against Lin Jie's face, which greatly embarrassed him. As soon as she realized what was happening, she immediately blushed and returned to her seat. Upon reaching the Beastmaster Academy, everyone was stunned by the scale of the place. Almost everyone was ready to give their lives to study in this place. Suddenly, Li Pengyun came out to them, announcing that 17 people from the middle school had arrived for registration. Tan Yang announced that 21 people from the 3rd school and middle school had also arrived. Lu Siqi addressed Guan Ning, reminding her that she was their chief and must not lose to them. Lin Jie gave her a thumbs up, after which the girl announced that 12 people from her school had arrived for registration. One of the representatives called them country bumpkins, because their city was more remote than larger cities. Suddenly, Chin Nei jumped down from one of the statues towards them, announcing that he was responsible for registration. First of all, he congratulated everyone on successfully passing the test, but warned against getting too excited. The difficulty of the university entrance exams is incomparable to a simple trial exam, since the dropout rate is 80%. This means that only 10 of them will be able to successfully pass the exams, and those who only pass the low-level tests will definitely be eliminated. One of the guys said that many people don't even need to worry about getting into college, since nothing will work out anyway. Tan Yang decided to ask Guo Xinyi who else besides the two of them could get through. Noticing the long-haired guy, she decided that he was very strong. Then her gaze turned to Lin Ji, but she thought that this guy was a bit strange. She didn't take her eyes off him, feeling that this guy's strength seemed incomprehensible. But Tan Yun was sure that he was just a country bumpkin. Overall, Ping Hai's level was 1 level lower than theirs, so there was nothing to worry about. Today, they will check into a hotel on the academy grounds, rest, and prepare for exams, and the cafeteria will provide free food to everyone during the exams. Hearing about food and rest, everyone immediately realized how hungry they were, and Guan Ning invited her brother to have lunch together. When they were in the dining room, the two boys noticed that Guan Ning was very beautiful. His interlocutor asked him to speak more quietly and not to disgrace their school, although he also liked the girl. Guan Ning herself continued to serve meat to Lin Jie, even though he was already full. Suddenly, Liu Ziqi and Zhang Xiaoyun approached them, asking where they got so much food. They also noticed that the two of them looked like a couple, which made Guan Ning confused. Those two guys didn't understand where Lin Jie got so many girls from, although, in their opinion, he looked much scarier than them. Suddenly, another guy approached Lin Jie's table, asking permission to sit together. After hearing the permission, he introduced himself as Zhou Xiang from Qinping School. He had heard that there was a high school student in their town who had passed the highest level of difficulty test, and he was wondering if he had come. It was suspicious because the exams hadn't even started yet, and they were already trying to find out information to make it easier to pass them. Zhou Xiang explained that he wanted to make friends because for small characters like him, it was important to gain at least some information in order to hope to win the exams. Guan Ning concluded that they had nothing to tell him and asked him to leave. The guy asked not to be so hostile, since he also knew full information about everyone present. He pointed to his leader, Li Pongyun, who was standing next to the three girls. He is a well-known local high school talent who passed a highly challenging assessment 2 months ago. His pet is the poisonous ivy monster, a plant element that reaches rank 3, which surprised Liu Ziqi and Zhang Xiaoyun. His family is also famous in the area, and they provided him with high-level evolution materials. Guan Ning tried to understand how big the difference was between their pets, since she was only a 2nd rank, 7th level. Zhou Xiang then pointed at Guo Xini, clarifying that she was a troublesome girl and that her pet was a 2nd rank, 8th level steel lizard. She only contracted her first pet in her 3rd year of school, and it took her only a month to pass the high difficulty certification. Everyone was curious whether it was possible to raise a pet to rank 2, level 8, in 6 months. If a person's soul power is high enough, then contracts can be made with stronger pets. Suddenly, Guo Xini turned her attention to Lin Jie and winked at him, surprising him. Zhou Xiang suddenly clarified that there was another master, Tan Yun, a guy with a dual-element pet. The teacher mentioned earlier that some very rare pets have 2 elements, but most of these beasts cannot be tamed. Stone Demon Lin Jie is both spirit and stone, and it seems like this dual element is worth exploring. After Zhou Xiang told them everything he knew, he asked them in return to tell him about the guy who had passed the hardest level. Liu Ziqi started to answer him, but Lin Jie abruptly interrupted her and said that the guy had not arrived. In addition, he apologized to the guy, clarifying that the person he was looking for was not there and they did not even know him. Zhou Xiang resigned himself to the answer, and since they didn't want to talk, he didn't insist, and then said goodbye. However, he was sure that these guys were hiding something, and most likely that same person was one of them. Liu Ziqi didn't understand why Lin Jie didn't tell the truth when he should be proud of his achievement, but the guy didn't want to be an upstart and didn't want them to notice him so quickly. Besides, they didn't know the veracity of his information. After eating, Guan Ning suggested that the girls practice together in the evening so as not to fail the exam. Then she turned to Lin Jie, asking if he would come to their room in the evening, and the guy had already started imagining girls in revealing clothes. Suddenly, someone came up behind Guan Ning and slapped her, catching her off guard. The 3 guys immediately grinned, offering to come to them instead of Lin Jie. Guan Ning reacted instantly and was about to hit the offender in the face, but he intercepted her hand. Then an enraged Lin Jie approached them and sternly ordered him to let the girl go. If a fight broke out, they would be punished immediately. But the bully noted that the girls from Pinghai were pretty cute, but the guys were just crap. But before he could finish speaking, Lin Jie's fist immediately flew into his face. The comrades immediately took a fighting stance, and Lin Jie declared that they could say whatever they wanted about him, but they would not dare to offend his sister. He was not ready to forgive them for such insolence, and then he was going to punish them properly. The leader of this gang was about to release his beast to settle everything here and now, but Li Pinyun suddenly stopped him, asking him not to disgrace their school. The blow was powerful, so we can assume that they are even. Lin Jie stated that this was not the end, but Li Pinyun clarified that he would teach him a lesson himself, and if he had any grievances, he could take them out on him. To avoid escalating the conflict, Guan Ning grabbed her brother's hand and pulled him toward the exit. Even from this small scuffle, Li Pinyun concluded that this guy was Lin Jie. Later in the evening, the 3 girls were in the bathroom, and Guan Ming asked why her friends had come there. Liu Ziqi explained that she should be thanked for her help in training, and their support reached the 2nd rank. The next day, when all the schools gathered together, Chin-ne decided to tell everyone the good news. After analyzing their past results, he was ready to express the level of the first group of examinees this year. But as it turned out, they were the worst group, and Chin-ne didn't expect anything good from them. Liu Siqi couldn't believe that this was called good news, while yesterday's bully said that they were the ones holding everyone back. The exam will take place in the space of the Source Stone, without choosing the difficulty, in a mysterious forest. After everyone has calmly entered the space, a point panel will appear on each person's hand, which will increase their points depending on which animals they killed. For a first-rank beast, you get 10 points, for the second rank 20, and for the third, 30. If they lose consciousness or die, they will be disqualified. And in the center of the forest, there will be a pole with the scores and coordinates of the top 10 players marked on it. Some students immediately realized that if there were third-rank beasts there, a confrontation with them could result in immediate expulsion from the exam. The competition lasts 4 hours, after which a ranking of points will be compiled and the top 10 examinees will be selected. Li Pingyun immediately asked whether it was only allowed to kill animals, to which Chin-ne replied that the winner who killed another examinee would receive all of the opponent's points. Many were unhappy that the rules were too harsh and encouraged killing each other. But in this case, you can team up. Any method could be used to achieve success, and Guo Shenyi once again turned her attention to Lin Jie. The real battlefield is much tougher than this. If anyone wants to leave now, they can say so. The points winner will receive the title of Best Newcomer and many privileges upon admission. Guan Ning decided that it would be great to meet her brother, and even if she couldn't make it into the top 10, she could at least help him. Lin Jie told her that once she entered the space, she should use the hawk's ability to find him as soon as possible. Chin-ne asked everyone to calm down and then began to transfer them to another space. Appearing in the mysterious forest, Lin Jie immediately noticed the amount of time remaining on his wrist and his glasses. Anyone who wants to know their ranking will eventually head to the central pillar, and this will likely be the most dangerous area in the later stages. But if you don't go to the stone and update your points, the coordinates will be displayed in a new way, which will attract other players. The real purpose of this exam is to allow players to compete against each other, and as long as you are strong enough, you can ignore the rules. No one can take away points from the strong, and the points of others will be captured by the strong. But this is just a game. Suddenly, a first-rank two-headed forest python tried to attack the guy, but he managed to activate the shield. For safety reasons, he decided to maintain the protection of the soul. In any case, it would not take much energy. He then summoned a stone demon to temporarily hide his power and test the level of his beast. Lin Jie decided not to pursue the snake, since it only gave 10 points, so it was most effective to kill high-level monsters. It was better to challenge more powerful beasts, which the stone golem agreed with. Now the boy was wondering if Guan Ning would be able to find him, and he hoped that she was doing well. At this time, Guan Ning had already scored 30 points by defeating the giant centipede. She then sent her hawk ahead to search for Lin Jie. Combining her gaze with the hawk, the girl watched as the other players fought the monsters, but he couldn't move too far away from her. Looks like I'll have to go there. It shouldn't be hard for Lin Jie to hit the target. Maybe I'll be able to find him using the coordinates on the stone stele. Suddenly, Guan Ning tried to attack the yellow ostrich, but the girl managed to jump up and dodge. Apparently, the beast depicted on the stone stela is a second-rank, 5th-level golden hawk scorpion. He shouldn't be an opponent for her second-rank, 7th-level hawk, and she was confident that she could easily get 20 points. But suddenly, someone threw a boomerang at the bird. It was a second-rank, 4th-level human race savage beast. Next to him, Guan Ning noticed the bully from yesterday, asking him if he thought it was mean to steal someone else's glasses. However, the rules do not prohibit this, and besides everything else, he can not only steal her glasses. The boy was eager to kill her, so he asked the giant to get rid of the bird. At first, the savage sent his boomerang towards the hawk, but then he turned towards Guan Ning. The girl managed to jump back, but was immediately grabbed by the guy. He covered her mouth with his hand so that she could not give orders to the beast. Humanoid beasts, unlike ordinary ones, have a major advantage: higher intelligence, and they can act of their own free will. The savage immediately grabbed the hawk, and the guy said that before getting rid of her, he wanted to have some fun. Meanwhile, Lin Jie scored 40 points while the stone demon was finishing off the monster. Suddenly, he noticed that Zhou Xiang had encountered a second-rank giant ape not far from him, but his terrifying snout had almost dealt with it. Having defeated her, the guy already had 60 points, after which he noticed Lin Jie and greeted him, remembering that they had seen each other in the dining room. Zhou Xiang doesn't know his identity yet, but he knows a lot of information. and perhaps it can be used. The plump guy turned his attention to the stone demon, trying to find out more about him since he had never seen him. He also decided that it wasn't Lin Jie based on the information he knew, since he was using an ice beast. Lin Jie scratched the back of his head, explaining that it was just an ordinary D-rank beast that had only risen to the second stage. Then Zhou Xiang suggested admiring its snout. It was a rare beast of strangeness, and it had already risen to the second rank of the 7th level. And since they were linked by fate, the guy asked permission to help him with his glasses, and guaranteed that Lin Jie would be among the top 10. But what he really wanted was to help him up, and then, when the guy was no longer useful, finish him off. At this moment, Guan Ning suddenly grabbed the attacker's hand and threw him over her shoulder. He was scared when the girl menacingly declared that she had gotten ahead of her brother last time, but now she would not let him go so easily. At that very moment, her hawk turned purple, burning the savage, who did not expect such a thing. The boy asked the animal to help him, but it got scared of the hawk and ran away. Guan Ning noticed that his pet also had his own thoughts, and this was not good, and the guy had one last request: not to hit where her brother hit. When she finished with him, she noticed that she had gained points from this guy. Meanwhile, looking at the leaderboard, the examiner noticed that Li Penyun was in first place, and he already had 170 points. This batch of examinees turned out to be much better than Qin Nei had expected. In less than an hour, some scored over 100 points. At this time, Li Penyun met with the spotted tiger, a 3rd-rank, 1st-level wild beast. The poison ivy, which was the boy's beast, immediately entered the tiger's mouth to destroy it from the inside. The guy asked his beast to stop fooling around because it was time to look for the next victim. And at that very second, the monster's body was pierced by several dozen appendages. When it was finished, the ivy enveloped the beast's body and began to devour it. Li Penyun already had a total of 210 points, realizing that the place of the leader among the newcomers belonged only to him. Those who reached the stone in the middle of the forest noticed that Li Penyun was in first place. Guo Shini was in second place, but that was because Tan Yong had given her all his beasts and had 0 points himself. He decided to deal with a couple of people later. In his opinion, it was too early to contact Li Pengyun, so their attention shifted to Lu Gang from their academy. Guo Xinyi remembered that there was a genius youth named Lin Jie, but for some reason, she didn't see his name on the leaderboard. Tan Yang decided that he was using some means to create a stir, and was actually nothing special. Meanwhile, Guan Ning was scouting the area and noticed that there was a wind butterfly to her left and a man-eating flower to her right. However, she could not find her brother, and tried to understand where she needed to go. Meanwhile, Lin Jie and Zhou Xiang came across a 2nd-rank wood ghost. The fat guy decided to leave it to Lin Jie and finish off the monster himself when he was almost done fighting in order to take the points. However, his plan was not destined to come true, as the stone demon finished off the monster with one blow. In an hour and 40 minutes, 17 people dropped out of the exam, while the top 10 had already scored more than 100 points. Qin Nei noticed that Lin Jie had risen from 33rd place to 9th place in less than 2 hours, and it seemed like he really had ability. When he found him on the screen, it turned out that the guy had joined a team. Zhou Xiang didn't expect Lin Jie to finish off the monster so quickly, even though he could have kept one for himself. However, the exam is related to their promotion, so every time Lin Jie attacks, his pet fights with all his might. If Zhou Xiang also wants to get points, he will have to defeat the next monster himself. Suddenly, the system announced that a rare beast had appeared in sight, and Lin Jie decided that he could get more points. At that very second, a huge, thick, and clearly living tree appeared in front of them. Zhou Xiang happily noticed the golden tree and thought it was an additional reward, but suddenly, roots grew out of the ground and grabbed him. It turned out to be a golden dried beast, a 3rd-rank plant type of the 9th level. Zhou Xiang immediately asked his comrade for help, feeling that the monster was sucking out his energy. Lin Jie remembered that they had agreed to kill him one at a time, but the situation had gotten out of control, and they needed to team up to kill him. But the hero asked not to tease him, because he knew that Lin Jie could handle it himself, so he would go. Zhou Xiang tried to stop him and began to beg for salvation. Lin Jie agreed to save him, but in exchange for something, and this angered the tied-up guy. He promised to finish off Lin Jie as soon as he was saved, so he claimed that he knew some secrets about the others and could tell them. Lin Jie demanded answers, and he immediately shouted about Li Penyun and Guo Xinyi's special skills. Perhaps these skills were some kind of enhancement, which was very important information. After that, Lin Jie summoned a stone demon, which used a crushing blow aiming at the stomach. But the tree grabbed the demon, and Lin Jie realized that his second-rank 9th-level beast was having difficulty with the third-rank 9th-level beast. It was clear that he couldn't free himself, so he would have to call upon Snegurochka. Suddenly, the boy screamed, asking the demon if this was all he could do. The tree almost completely enveloped the beast with its roots, and Zhou Xiang decided that it was all over. Xin Ne watched the events closely, as Lin Jie had even passed the super difficult level. Suddenly, the stone demon turned into a clod of dust, unlocking a new ability, Ghost Form. The dual stats were very useful, and one could now gauge the demon's strength in this form. The tree tried to attack him with its roots, but all the blows passed through the demon. It seems that in Ghost Form, due to the lack of a physical body, he can avoid all physical damage and control. Lin Jie ordered to use stone projectile throwing and aim at the tree's eyes and belly. The demon immediately carried out the command, after which he threw several stone spikes at the tree's body, knocking it to the ground. However, the gap was too large, and this damage was not enough to deal with the monster. The freed Zhou Xiang didn't understand why Lin Jie was standing still when he should have escaped. He knew that if the guy died here, all his points would be wasted. The beast immediately grabbed Zhou Shun and began to run away, while Lin Jie remained in place. The tree tried to attack the guy, but he called upon the Snow Maiden, who froze its roots. At the same time, the stone demon rushed forward and used a crushing blow. When Snegurochka began to attack the tree with ice spikes, the demon again took the form of a ghost, and the final blow was dealt by Lin Jie. After killing this monster, the demon rose to the 3rd rank, learning the ability of the ghost form. After bifurcation, the ghost form increases combat power by 100%, which is the path to the king level. Xin Ni was surprised to see his ice pet with divine potential. Lin Jie noticed that a 3rd-rank rare beast added 60 points, and now he couldn't remain modest. At this time, Zhou Xiang returned to him, shocked that Lin Jie had defeated the monster. The boy looked at Snegurochka, asking who she was, deciding that she was a candidate from another school. Lin Jie remembered too late that he hadn't called her back, and since he saw her, he had no choice. He stated that he himself did not know who she was, and it seemed that she was also an ice beast in human form, and it was she who defeated the golden beast. Zhou Xiang didn't understand why the animals were killing each other, and then assumed that it was someone's pet. But if it is an ice element, that its owner is the legendary Lin Jie, and if he was able to defeat the golden beast, his strength is definitely superior to theirs. Lin Jie gave Snow Maiden a written order to pretend to look at them in order to attack, and she prepared ice spikes. Zhou Xiang immediately grabbed his beast, realizing that Snegurochka wanted to attack them. He understood that both of them definitely couldn't die, and decided to first finish off Lin Jie and then escape. At that very moment, Zhou Shun's beast swallowed Lin Jie and began to run away, and the boy gave a message to the Snow Maiden and the demon that he was okay and they could return. The escaped Zhou Xiang was pleased, because they not only escaped pursuit, but also received points. Suddenly, he was surprised to hear Lin Jie's voice, asking if it was safe now. Zhou Xiang asked in shock if he was okay, but he just wrapped himself in a shield and asked to let go. The plump guy suggested that he sit there a little longer, since the chase was not over yet, and he himself was surprised, because Lin Jie should have been absorbed, although everything was fine with him. Suddenly, the beast spat out Lin Jie, and its owner did not understand how the hero got out. Lin Jue stated that if the monster continued to pursue, they could team up and finish it off. Noticing that no one was chasing them anymore, the guy asked to tell him about the art of the soul. Zhou Xiang suggested that they first go to the stela and check whether they had managed to enter the top 10, and then discuss everything in detail. Along the way, he explained that soul art was a unique skill that awakened in a few talented beastmasters. It cannot be learned from books, nor can other people learn it. It all depends on the master's physique, and due to the rarity of the art, ordinary teachers do not teach it. Lin Jie inquired about Li Pinyun and Guo Xinyi's special soul art, and heard that it was very powerful. Approaching the stele, Zhou Xiang discovered that his name was not there. But there was still a chance. An hour remained, and 10th place only had 100 points. If he added the idiot points, he would definitely be able to take 10th place. But as soon as he turned around, he noticed 180 points on his comrade's wrist. Comparing this with the table, the boy realized that the person in front of him was none other than Lin Jie. Then he remembered that those who had passed the super hard level could have 2 pets, but this guy had been hiding his strength the whole time. Lin Jie reminded him that if it weren't for him, the boy would have been destroyed by the golden tree long ago. He wanted to get some more information, but Zhou Xiang risked an attack and sent his beast into battle. At that very moment, a demon and Snow Maiden appeared next to Lin Jie, freezing the enemy beast. Although he didn't have many points, they were equivalent to a rare third-rank ferocious beast, and he would take them. Zhou Shang immediately decided to tell everything so that he would be spared, but Lin Jie changed his mind and did not care about the opponent's spiritual art. The guy proudly declared that they were not his rivals, which frightened Zhou Shun even more. But before he could do anything, Zhou Shun's body was pierced by grass shoots. Li Pingyun approached and calmly stated that he had been waiting for Lin Jie for a long time. Zhou Xiang immediately warned his leader that this guy had an ice element beast. Lin Jie didn't expect to meet this man here. It seemed like the debt he owed him earlier could now be considered repaid. Li Pengyun suggested that his comrade take a rest, and he smiled, concluding that the boss had taken his glasses, and then disappeared. He then asked Lin Jie to show his true strength to determine who was worthy of becoming the leader of the newcomers. However, the hero was not interested in the title of leader, and if he wanted, he could give it up. But Li Pengyun suddenly laughed, not expecting Lin Jie to be so stubborn, and after he dealt with him, he intended to get rid of everyone in the rankings. He began to feel overwhelmed, and his self-control began to slip. Lin Jie remembered with horror that his sister was also on the leaderboard and was now in danger. He rushed towards Guan Ning, and Li Pengyun ordered his beast to catch him. Ivy flew into the air and grabbed the stone demon and Lin Jie, who managed to cover himself with a shield. Li Pengyun felt that they were too easy to capture, so he ordered the beast to destroy them. However, the guy had no time for games, and Snow Maiden appeared behind his opponent. With a sharp movement, she froze it, but the ivy was still free. The girl turned out to be faster and also froze the enemy beast, and the demon finished it off with his fist. Lin Jie didn't finish off Li Pingyun and simply left because he really didn't have time. A little later, Liu Gang approached this place, noticing that he had an excellent opportunity. It was a true natural selection, and now all of Li Pengyun's points belonged to him. He summoned his dragon in second rank, 9th level iron armor. After this, the boy sent the dragon to the frozen Li Pengyun, deciding to take the crown from the former ruler. Liu Gang was confident that he was now the leader, and that luck was on his side. But suddenly he noticed that his glasses had not increased, and when he turned around, the tendrils grabbed him. Looking closer, he saw Li Pengyun, who had swapped bodies with Ivy. The leader stated that he could not be defeated because it was his special technique, synchronization. Liu Gang wanted to order the dragon to attack, but it was already bound by Ivy. Meanwhile, Lin Jie was running and thought that if they dared to touch his sister, they would be finished. A battle was already taking place in the clearing. Tan Yong and Guo Xinyi captured Guan Ning. She was trapped in a water sphere from which she could not escape. This was done by a third-rank, second-level undead mage with a water element, and the guy clarified that she couldn't break through the water bubble. He decided to rely on Guo Xinyi. If she took her points, she would have a chance to become the leader of the newcomers. The girl suggested that Guan Ning was too pretty for him to handle on his own, and that he was not interested in anyone except Guo Xinyi. However, there is no need to rush. You need to wait before attacking, which raised questions in the guy. Guo Xinyi explained that one should wait until a bigger catch bites. Suddenly, stone spikes flew towards them, but Tan Yun protected himself and his friend with a water sphere. Then Lin Ji approached them and began to insistently ask them to release Guan Ning. The couple tensed up when they noticed two animals next to the guy. The sister tried to warn her brother that they were very strong, but he asked her not to worry and promised to pull her out. Tan Yong guessed that he was Lin Ji, and Guo Xinyi felt that he was different from the others. The guy decided to assess the enemy's strength, and the girl asked him to be careful because he was not so simple. If Tan Yong defeats Lin Jie and she takes the points, she will become the leader, but if she loses, she will take her comrade's points. At that very moment, he sent his undead mage forward, and he began to create a sphere of water. However, Lin Jie didn't even flinch and repelled the attack without the help of the beasts. At the same time, the stone demon tried to sneak attack Tan Yun, but was thrown up by a stream of water. The beast fell into a water prison, but transformed into a barren spirit and easily escaped. Tan Yun apologized because his beast also possessed two elements and was invulnerable to physical attacks. Guo Xinyi asked him to watch his back, but it was too late, as he himself had no immunity to physical damage. Realizing that at this rate he could lose, the guy decided to use the Seal of the Undead. The magician immediately bound the stone demon, and Lin Jie ordered it to return to its normal state, otherwise it would be suppressed. The hero was confident that Snegorochka would not have to interfere in the battle. Tan Yun noticed that the guy was truly a genius, but he asked him to shut his mouth because now he would show his true strength. Suddenly, Guo Xingyi concluded in a frightened voice that they were definitely no match for him and would lose. The girl tried to stop him, deciding that they could still come to an agreement. In fact, they are already in the top 10 and have no need to fight. Lin Jie was not convinced by these arguments, so Guo Xingyi asked for Guan Ning to be released. Tan Yun was in no hurry, because if he let go, they might attack together. But the girl loudly repeated the order, and the guy obeyed, removing the water barrier. As soon as Guan Ning was free, she immediately ran to her brother, thanking him for saving her. Lin Jue asked her not to worry, and as for her rivals, he said that he could destroy them for harming his sister. But then he added that he could just apologize, which angered Tan Yun. Suddenly, Guo Xingyi declared that she had an exclusive soul technique and could use her skills to help unlock new techniques. Lin Jie thought it would be helpful, but Tan Yong said they didn't need help. But looking at the girl's expression, he realized that there was no other way out. Suddenly, Li Pinyun appeared nearby, remarking that since everyone was here, he could destroy them in one fell swoop. The leader's appearance visibly angered Tan Yun, as he had not expected such a situation. Guo Xingyi proposed to team up and take first place from him. Xin Ni, who was watching them, thought that he wanted to keep them. But if they started fighting, he would lose his talents. He ordered several people to leave, clarifying that they only had 10 minutes. Tan Yun didn't understand why his friend wanted to help Lin Jie, when he could use a technique to take control of them and take away all the points. But the girl really wanted to help and asked for forgiveness, and the guy decided that she had fallen in love with Lin Ji. Just as Li Penyun was about to send his beast into battle, Qin Ne's voice loudly stopped them. He stated that there was no need to fight each other anymore since they were registered, but there would be one special task coming up next. At that very moment, 4 second-year students occupying middle places in the academy emerged from the portal. If those taking the exam successfully pass the tests, they will receive a one-time purification ritual. But if they fail, their place will still be reserved. Guan Ning didn't understand how they could defeat the second-year students. Besides, the beasts were tired after many battles. However, Lin Jie was satisfied with the outcome, and Li Pinyun was sorry that they couldn't be eliminated, but at least they would have a chance to compete. Tan Yun was also ready to fight, and suggested that they discuss everything after defeating the second-year students. Suddenly, Guo Xingyi asked Lin Jie if they could consider each other allies, and Guan Ning jealously shouted that her brother had not promised her anything. Lin Jie wanted to take the challenge prize, since it could level up, but the opponents sent 4, although there were 5 of them. It was clear that they were being underestimated, and one way or another, they would have to form an alliance. The guy said that Guo Xingyi would be on a team with his sister, but both girls wanted to be with him. Xing Tao wanted to know if the newcomers had decided who would fight him. Tan Yong decided to be his opponent in order to prove his strength to Guo Xingyi. Xing Tao praised the boy, adding that courage would not help him, after which he released his deadly praying mantis. Zhang Man approached Li Pinyun and asked him to choose her as her opponent, and he smiled, declaring that he would show no mercy. At that very moment, the girl released the Thunder Lion, a 3rd-rank, 9th-level wild beast, and asked it to try to cause her as much pain as possible. The rest were left to choose too, and Guo Xingyi noticed that the girl looked weak. At that very moment, Wu Zetian approached Lin Jie and offered to fight him because he didn't like his hairstyle. Meanwhile, Hui noticed that the new girls were so cute, and she couldn't stand girls who looked cuter than her. At this time, many students began to return to the real world, and Liu Siqi and Zhang Xiaoyun were thrown out along with them. Many days passed, and it was obvious that they would have been thrown out anyway. Lu Gang grabbed his head, not understanding how he could have become so stupid. Qin Ne noticed that there were only a few guys who stood out in the stream. Suddenly, Gao Wenbai approached him, asking for permission to conduct the next test. Qin Ne had to try very hard to select his disciples, although his methods were too extreme. So he will still miss out on several talented people. And he still has 10 additional spots where he can select guys from those eliminated. Once they had reached an agreement, they turned to the students who had not made it into the top 10. They still had 10 free spots, and those who successfully passed the new test would get there. Liu Siqi and Zhang Xiaoyun realized that a miracle did exist, and this time they had to try harder. Lu Gang was confident that he would definitely hold out, no matter what it cost him. At this time, the mantis Xing Tao created a tornado and defeated the beast Tan Yun. Zhang Man noticed that Li Pengyun had amazing stamina, but he had already lost, and there was no point in continuing. The guy was noticeably beaten, but he was still standing on his feet, causing the girl to smile. Hui laughed at the idea that these newcomers were new geniuses, because the academy was full of such people. At the moment, all they have to do is spend time on training. Gao Wenbai was against such methods, as such behavior deprived them of the incentive to develop. However, Chen Ne wanted to ruin their spirits. Otherwise, no one would achieve anything, and they would think they were the coolest. The teacher noticed that one of the students was still resisting, and now froze the third-rank Furious Warhorse. Wu Zetin didn't understand how this was possible, while Lin Jie sent Snow Maiden forward. As soon as the test time ended, Chen Ne noticed that they had seen quite a few geniuses, but Lin Jie seemed to embody the 18 great Beastmasters. Perhaps even the masters at his age did not have such powers, and he needed to be transferred to their group. Chen Ne thought that Gao Wenbai was in a hurry, because the distribution of students into groups must comply with the rules. Guan Ning was immediately overjoyed that they had won, but Guo Xinyi didn't think that Lin Jie was so strong. Tan Yun fell to his knees, screaming that there was a gulf between them, and decided to turn his grief into motivation. The other second-year students thought that Wu Zetan had simply given in, since the newcomer had not yet entered the academy, but had already won over a second-year student. Lin Jie suggested continuing, and Zhang Man asked him not to think that he could look down on them now. Then the hero grinned, and suggested that the three of them should act against him. The second-year student considered this impudence, and sent his mantis into battle, but he was immediately met by a stone demon. Gao Wenbai pointed out that Xing Tao was definitely no match, and if they continued like this, the second-year student's reputation would decline. Then the students were told that the test was over. The only one who passed was Lin Ji, but the others also did well. Xing Tao threateningly declared that as soon as he graduated from the academy, Lin Jie Khan, but he decided that there was no need to compete anymore, since he was already cool. However, this did not calm the second-year student. Moving on to the rewards. The guy increased his constitution to the 9th rank and his spirit to 1,080. In addition, he was given 500 achievement points and congratulated on entering the academy. As soon as Lin Jie returned to the real world, he noticed that he was surrounded by other disciples. They all admired the one who had passed the super difficult level. Suddenly, Guo Xinyi leaned towards the guy, deciding that his spirit had another form. She can tell him about activating an exclusive skill, and he can come after the exam. Then she will tell him everything. Xin Ne then announced that those who scored in the top 10 would be accepted immediately. He also added that the leader among the newcomers in this exam is Li Pengyun. Many people did not understand why he was the leader and not Lin Jie. Gao Wenbai added that he should not have won the championship and that this was not entirely fair. Xin Ne decided that it was impossible to place all the responsibility on one person, and the rules of the test determine the priority based on points. Now those who will participate in the retest must follow him. The rest of the top 10 can leave and wait for the ceremony in 10 days. Before they parted, Guan Ning hugged Liu Siqi and Zhang Xiaoyun, wishing them good luck. Suddenly, Zhou Shang approached Lin Jie and noticed him confronting a second-year student. That's why he thought about becoming his personal disciple. He began to praise the guy, but Lin Jie apologized as he did not accept students. Besides, he doesn't have the right to enter yet, but Zhou Xiang promised that he will pass, and he just needs to wait. A little later, Guan Ning decided to celebrate her successful completion of the test and have some fun in the city. Lin Jie noticed that after 4 hours of testing, he was very tired and needed to rest properly. Suddenly, the guy took out his phone and noticed that last time, all the money went to upgrading the beast, and now his balance was practically empty. Guan Ning offered her brother something to eat, and he reluctantly agreed. Arriving at the premium restaurant, Lin Jie tried to understand how such a place could even exist. Guan Ning had long wanted to come here and suggested to her brother that he call the pets. They had fought for them for so long, and they deserved a treat too. Noticing Snow Maiden, Guan Ning remembered that last time she didn't look so mature and realized that she had evolved. Lin Jie decided to tell her about the system later, when he had time and opportunity. Guan Ning had asked for it to be done in the evening, and now it was time to place the order. Lin Jie glanced at the menu and looked in horror at the number of zeros on the price tag. At this time, Snegurochka was stroking the demon, which the monster really liked. Then a waitress came over to them, and Guan Ning started making a rather large order. 5 minutes later, their table was piled high with food, and everyone was pleasantly surprised, except Lin Jie. When they finished their meal, the guy thought about running away, but the waitress said that they owed him 3,700,000. Salvation came in the form of Guan Ning, who returned and decided to take over the bill, as she had been saving money. Once outside, the girl said that just thinking about how they would now be studying in such a big city immediately sent shivers down her spine. Lin Jie realized that he needed to find a way to earn money and accept some kind of task. Suddenly, they noticed a death arena nearby, where beast lords were fighting each other. The host said that by defeating the four-armed monster, one could take all the money from the prize fund, and he was looking for people willing to challenge him. The winner would receive a prize of 50,000, and Lin Jie smiled as he found a way to make money. The rules forbade the use of any soul magic or spells, only fair fistfights for the spectators to enjoy. Before going out, it was necessary to sign a waiver of liability. If a pet accidentally kills another pet during a fight or dies itself, no one will be held responsible. Since they wanted to give money like this, Lin Jie would gladly accept it. According to the system, his opponent is rank 3 and level 2, and it would be better to level up the rank 2, level 9 stone beast. Without thinking twice, the guy immediately pumped it up to the 3rd rank of the 3rd level, spending 780 points. The higher the level, the more achievement points are needed to level up, and Guan Ning was surprised that he had suddenly risen. Lin Jie guessed that it was because the demon had eaten a lot, and his sister had wished him good luck. The presenter noticed that a guy with an unremarkable appearance and a red-haired stone man dared to take part. The audience immediately began to make fun of the guy, thinking that he would be scared. They were sure that the guy had little confidence, and they called the demon worthless. Xianggu approached Lin Jie and said that if he died at the hands of his beast, he should not blame him. In response, the guy asked him to give it his all, after which they signed the contract. When the host announced the start of the competition, Xianggu sent his four-armed monster forward. At first, he tried to grab the stone demon, but it sharply dodged. He wanted to counterattack, but his opponent immediately grabbed his leg and intercepted his fist. Xianggu smiled. Although his monster couldn't use skills, it had no equal in brute strength. As expected, the rules are in favor of the four-armed man, so it's no wonder he's so confident. Suddenly, the monster grabbed the demon by the leg and prepared to deliver the decisive blow. If it were possible to use skills, the stone spirit would have crushed him long ago. But unfortunately, the rules do not allow this. The enemy has 4 arms, the perfect weapon for hand-to-hand combat. But the stone demon unlocked the form for the last time in a critical situation. If what Guo Xinyi said was true, it was worth the risk. Either he would unlock the new form, or be beaten to death. The boy turned menacingly to his pet, asking if this was all he was capable of, and whether he would continue to rely on the Snow Maiden's power. At that very moment, the demon regained his spirit and rose sharply, striking his opponent in the stomach, and he himself acquired a new form. A demon general. It turns out that the stone armor attached to his body can fall off depending on the situation on the battlefield. At first, Xianggu laughed, confident that the demon would not have time to escape. But suddenly, he increased his speed, which stunned the guy. The demon noticeably accelerated and began to beat the four-armed monster, who did not understand where the blows were coming from. There were only 10 seconds left to maintain this form, so Lin Jie asked the demon to stop playing. Then he simply dealt a decisive blow and rose to the 3rd rank of the 4th level, unlocking the lightning ram. Xianggu became visibly nervous, realizing that this couldn't be true. At that very moment, the host loudly announced that the winner was the four-armed monster, leaving Lin Jie stunned. No one could understand what was going on, because the four-armed monster lost, but the guy used skills, although they are prohibited. The host shouted loudly that the participant was eliminated due to the use of skills. However, many have noted that this is merely the removal of armor and is not considered magic. Xianggu didn't think that the guy would be able to get the money through trickery, but Lin Jie had a proposal. Since he had lost the battle between the beasts, they could have a one-on-one fight. The shocked presenter shouted loudly that the boy wanted to challenge the man, the previous champion of free wrestling. The spectators immediately started shouting with delight and urging them to fight, as they wanted to see it. This was much more interesting than a battle between pets, and Lin Jie looked at the demon and declared that he had won and could now look at him. Seeing the confirmation, Xianggu, the host, shouted that Lin Jie was the first one who dared to challenge him. If he can defeat the former wrestler, the prize will be his. Meanwhile, Tan Yong tried to ask Guo Xingyi if it was true that she was not interested in Lin Jie, but the girl repeated that her comrade was like a brother to her. However, the guy didn't understand how he was any worse than that brat. Besides, they had just met, and he didn't want Lin Jie to offend her. Guo Xinyi took offense, saying that she would solve her own problems, and asked him to rest, after which she left. Entering the alley, Tan Yun began to curse Lin Jie, deciding that he would show him something. Suddenly, he heard a girl's cry for help, and noticed some kind of monster hanging over the young girl. With one kick, he threw the monster away, after which he turned to the girl. The guy wanted to know what kind of monster it was. But suddenly, he heard someone's voice above him. At that very moment, a hooded guy jumped from the roof, and Tan Yun decided that he was the owner of that beast. The stranger stated that the so-called monsters are evil, and their pets are representatives of good. Pets have a much longer lifespan than humans, but due to their loyalty to their owners, some pets do not serve others after the owner's death. They have to live alone for a long time without care and attention, and then they begin to be mistaken for monsters. Tan Yun decided that this was nonsense, because if pets were harming people, he would not let it go. He asked the stranger to surrender, promising that he would take him to the association so that they could sort things out. The hooded boy decided to retreat, but not before touching the forehead of the girl's wolf, which began to grow in size. In fact, he was going to find them first, but since they came on their own, he decided to find out what value they represented. At this time, Guo Xinyi approached the arena and, entering, noticed Lin Jie fighting. Walking a little closer, she loudly wished him luck, when she suddenly noticed Guan Ning nearby. Shanggu began to boast that he became a champion for the first time after his very first fight in 2034. Normal people have a body type between 2 and 4. But this guy has a body type between 4 and 8. The former wrestler recalled that his stories made people's knees buckle, but this guy wasn't even embarrassed. But to prevent anyone from saying that he was being pressured, the man decided to give the opportunity to strike first. Since he was holding back, Lin Jie could start. Otherwise, he might accidentally break his bones. Zhang Gu loudly asked the audience to look at him carefully, and Lin Jie asked them not to blame him. At that very second, the guy jumped up, and with one blow sent the man flying, knocking him out. The stunned referee couldn't understand what had happened, as Zhang Gu had been knocked out with the first punch. He then stated that since he had not yet given the command, Lin Ji struck first and violated the rules. But the guy looked menacingly at the judge, and he began to apologize, explaining that he had not broken the rules. After that, he proudly announced that the winner was Lin Jie. He was counted 50,000, and now he had money for a hotel, when suddenly, Guo Xinyi approached him, not expecting him to handle it. Guan Ning reminded them that they weren't really friends, but Guo Xinyi asked them to remember that they were on a team, and they became a little closer. Besides, they would now be classmates, so the girl introduced herself again. In fact, she came to help activate the guy's additional ability. Guan Ning became interested, and her new acquaintance said that if she treated her as a friend, she could also help. After that, the three of them went to the hotel, and the girls did not understand why they were all there. Lin Jie, who approached them, immediately asked Guo Xinyi to begin. Her special spiritual power is called perception. Since the age of 7, she has been able to sense information that is difficult for ordinary people to detect. For example, someone's energy or direction, as well as some events that may happen in the future. The girl then walked up to Lin Jie and tilted her head towards him, which confused Guan Ning. Only in this way will she be able to understand what his ability is and direct his development in the right direction. Her heart was beating very hard, but now she needed to concentrate. As soon as she looked inside the guy, she noticed a strange pet. It did not look like either his stone demon or the other snow girl. It was most likely akin to their merging. She currently lacks sufficient physical strength, so she can only sense vague signals. Now it was Guan Ning's turn, but she didn't understand whether they had to touch foreheads. However, the potential hidden deep within can only be felt through this method. Looking inside Guan Ning, Guo Xinyi noticed a creature that smaller monsters were drawn to. But suddenly, the creature turned its gaze towards her, causing Guo Xinyi to immediately pull away. She decided to lie, explaining that she had noticed some dark shadows, and perhaps her potential had not yet been revealed. Whatever it is, she has a feeling it's something bad, so it's best not to say anything for now. Half an hour before midnight, Guo Xinyi noticed that it was not appropriate for a girl to be wandering the streets so late at night, because you never know who she might bump into. So she offered to stay with them, putting on a friendly face along the way. When they went to bed, Lin Jie could not sleep because there were two beautiful girls sleeping on either side of him. He was still thinking about the merger, so it was necessary for Snegorochka and the Stone Spirit to get along. 10 days later, the entrance ceremony began and the placement results were released. Lin Jie and Guan Ning noticed that they would be in the same class, which made them very happy. At that very moment, Guo Xinyi approached them and announced the good news. She would be with them too. Suddenly, Tan Yun turned to her, and the girl noticed with surprise that her comrade was seriously injured. The boy explained that he had met a couple of dangerous comrades, after which he remarked that he would be studying in the 2nd grade. Li Penyun was glad that he wasn't in the same first class as Lin Ji, Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to restrain himself and would have definitely killed him. Guan Ning met her friends and smiled as they passed by as well. Zhang Xiaoyun clarified that they were assigned to the 4th grade, but only the 1st and 2nd grades are the best. But they were still very happy, and Liu Siqi thanked Guan Ning for the training. A little later, Qin Nei announced that he was the supervisor of the 1st class and would guide them in their studies for the next 3 years. They have many courses, and everyone can choose whether to attend them or not, but he will periodically test their strength. For each test, the top 3 students in the ranking will receive a scholarship of 100,000 yuan. This was not surprising because they have the highest scholarships, and if you receive a payment at least twice, you can buy an advanced pet. The academy also offers various clubs and activities, projects for practice, and after classes, everyone can choose something of their own. He particularly highlighted virtual battles. Behind the academic building, there is a building for virtual battles that can accommodate several thousand students. Since this is an online simulation, their opponents are not only the academy students, but also all the Beastmasters from the country. In virtual battles, ratings bring substantial rewards and serve as the basis for ranking: bronze, silver, or gold. Hearing this, Lin Jie realized that he needed to level up the demon to the level of Snow Maiden as quickly as possible. After graduating, the boy attempted to merge, but it failed because their levels did not match. The next day, when the lesson was over, Lin Jie decided to quickly take up virtual combat to improve his level. In the hallway, seniors began inviting Lin Jie to various clubs in an attempt to recruit the talented newcomer. They all literally surrounded him, but the guy politely apologized, as he had no intention of joining the club yet. Suddenly, everyone turned their attention to the members of the High Mountain Club, and Lin Jie asked who they were. It was one of the Academy's top 5 clubs, and all its members were elite. The club's leader, a second-year student, was among the top 3 in the induction process. Luo Han immediately turned to the guy, and Guo Xinyi noticed that they looked angry, but she didn't think that Xing Tao would be a member of the High Mountain Club. Lin Jue was invited to join their club because if he did, his life would change dramatically. He must take into account that the club does not accept everyone, so it is important not to miss your chance. However, the club would not have any impact on his development, even if it was High Mountain, so he politely declined. The leader couldn't believe what he heard. He even turned down the High Mountain Club and missed out on such an opportunity. Xing Tao threateningly declared that if he did not join, he would become their #1 enemy. However, the guy didn't care, which angered the second-year student even more. Joining the club will add even more problems, and if they really know how to do something, let them try to convince him by force. Entering the virtual battle room, Lin Jie noticed a lot of people and decided to start as well. At that very second, he was transported to another dimension, where he noticed his characteristics and the huge number of participants. First of all, the guy decided to enter the top 10,000, after which the selection of an opponent began. 10 seconds later, he found himself on the field, where his first opponent stood before him. The red-haired man opposite guessed that the guy was participating in virtual battles for the first time. Every training season, they have new recruits coming in, and it looks like he's in luck, as this round will be his. He then summoned his second-rank first-level steel-throated boar, which looked too small. Now it was clear to Lin Jie why he was so happy to see the newcomer. The guy summoned a stone demon while his opponent wanted to show them the difference between. However, one light blow was enough for the demon to knock him down onto the enemy beast. Following this, Lin Jie began to fight with other people, increasing his rank by strengthening the stone demon. 2 days later, his beast rose to the 3rd rank of the 7th level, and Snegorochka to the 4th rank of the 2nd level. They had 2 days of intense fighting, which allowed the demon to rise straight to the 3rd rank, but now he was very tired. Many have already discussed him, as the super strong newcomer broke into the top 100,000 ratings in 3 days. Suddenly, Li Pingyun turned to him, noticing that the guy had fought for a very long time and very hard, but was in a hurry to upset him. Lin Jie thought he had dropped out, but his interlocutor replied that it had only taken him 3 days to reach the top 150,000. Guan Ning was surprised at first, but then she looked at her phone and announced that her brother had entered the top 100,000, which stunned Li Pingyun. A little later, the girl said that her rating was stuck at 180,000, and no matter how hard she tried, it was very difficult to rise further. She wanted to make a contract with another pet, and Lin Jie was curious about when she received the rights to own a second pet. but he apparently forgot that Guan Ning was the only one in their class who had passed the difficult selection process. Then he remembered that during the first exam, besides him, another person had chosen a difficult level. He then explained that one must take into account the rarity of growth and compatibility with the firebird when choosing a second pet. However, he has some advice on choosing a pet, and it's time to help her choose a beast with a hidden evolutionary path. Overjoyed, Guan Ning concluded that they would go to the pet store together this weekend. When the girl left for Linjie, Guo Xinyi approached, noticing that they were very close, training, studying, and eating together. She immediately became interested in what kind of relationship he had with Guan Ning. But the guy replied that if she was not on business, then he would go. Suddenly, Guo Xinyi grabbed his hands, saying that they might run into trouble. Previously, Tan Yun encountered an attack from a mysterious person, and they learned that their group of examinees was the target of his attacks. It is now known that he is very strong and has a unique soul that can demonize pets. The girl had been trying all this time to connect the demonization with the future of Guan Ning that she had sensed. The next day, while in the virtual battle room, Lin Jie decided to enter the top 10,000. Meanwhile, that same mysterious guy was closely watching his development and decided that he needed to be dealt with. Lin Jie teleported to the arena and noticed a guy in a battle mask standing in front of him. He released 2 pets at once, but Lin Jie decided to do the same. Beasts at rank 4 are very strong, and it's hard to imagine how powerful players will be above them. Suddenly, the opponent announced that he knew him and did not expect him to rise in the rankings so quickly. Before, he fought with scum. But in the top 10,000, they are truly elite fighters, and it will be a long time before he will be able to share their common cause. However, the guy asked not to make decisions for others and suggested getting started quickly. The masked man replied that then he would see true power equal to the heavens. After these words, the battle began, during which the demon and the snow maiden gave it their all. The ice girl successfully put up a shield in front of herself, but was caught in a whirlpool. However, she reacted instantly and stopped the turtle that was rushing towards her. Although the masked guy had the advantage, he was now in a passive defense and constantly on guard. The opponent's animals are working together. It seems the relationship between Snegorochka and the demon needs to be improved to increase their level of harmony. But suddenly the masked man declared that the real test was yet to come, after which he splashed the turtle with mud, and the fish began to splash him with water. It was their joint technique, recreation from water and mud. This skill visibly surprised Lin Jie, but there was no time to admire it as the turtle had already rushed towards them. In response to this, the guy ordered Snegorochka to use the harsh cold zone, and he himself attacked with a barrier. However, the spiny turtle's protection is not comparable to that of other pets, especially if it is covered in frozen mud. The masked man was sure that Lin Jie still had a lot to learn, and then ordered the use of a high-temperature water bomb. Lin Jie noticed that things were bad because the harsh cold zone could not be used again in the near future. The boy stood in front of Snegorochka and covered her with a shield, but the turtle quickly broke through his barrier. Sitting on the ground, Lin Jie concluded that they had lost, but they still had time to become stronger. The masked man was surprised that at a critical moment, he did not spare his life to protect his pet, and it was no surprise that the boss noticed him. Then he invited him to join their symbiotic team. They could help him awaken his hidden potential and rise to the next level. It didn't look like a school meeting, but the other person only asked for a yes or no answer. Lin Jie smiled and refused, as he wanted to defeat him with his own strength. The forum reported that the new god of war didn't make it into the top 10,000, and that this was his first defeat. Many students discussed this topic, and some were interested in more detailed information about the guy. Li Pengyun suddenly bumped into Lin Jie and assumed that he had also encountered the symbiosis team. When asked if he had joined, the long-haired guy asked not to underestimate him, and that this imposter would still pay for everything. Lin Jie wanted to inquire about their origin, but his interlocutor said that he would figure everything out himself. It seems they have quite a few henchmen, but it's unclear what they want. Guo Xinyi must have been talking about them. It's possible to squeeze some information out of the guy in the mask, but if you let things slide, it could lead to trouble. The 1,000 points he had left could allow the stone demon to rise to the 4th rank, but without the necessary materials, it was impossible to break through. If you buy all the necessary materials, you will need at least 400,000. Suddenly, Zhou Shang, who saw the message on the forum and learned that he had lost the battle, caught up with him. Lin Jie replied that he was not omnipotent, and then asked how he could obtain high-quality earth elemental essence and soul stones. Zhou Shang realized that they were talking about extremely rare and interesting items, so he asked how much he needed. He needed 30 pieces of essence and 3 spiritual stones. His companion was shocked because even if he robbed the rich people, it still wouldn't be enough. Suddenly, he remembered that he knew one place where these materials could be located and offered to take them there. A little later, they reached the Spirit Mountain. During the time of the ancient warriors, numerous rifts from other dimensions appeared in the world. These rifts connect other worlds, from which their beasts come. Several decades ago, the Beastmasters Association and the university controlled the entrances to secret territories, obtaining resources. But there are also undeveloped areas. Many people, wanting to get resources, went there and did not return. So these places were closed. Real warriors went there and brought out the resources Lin Jie needed. High-quality earth elemental essence and soul stones are found here. After going a little further, they discovered an unusual energy in the opening of the rock that was flowing down. Zhou Xiang advised him to think carefully, because if something terrible happened, they would not be able to get out. But if you can get both materials, the risk is worth it. The plump guy, despite his fear, declared that he would also go, since he had been gathering information precisely for this moment. He was confident that with Lin Ji, they would definitely be able to get a lot of good things and would definitely get rich. Jumping into the depths of the cave, at first they did not find anything interesting. But when they looked up, they saw crystals on the walls. These are low-rank crystals used to upgrade pets with the stone element. Although they are inexpensive, you used to have to spend money on them, but now you can freely get them in a secret area. Zhou Xiang urged his beast to take as many crystals as possible, but Lin Jie noticed that something was wrong. He immediately stopped them, noticing a lizard on the wall that was covered in crystals. It turns out that materials grow on other animals, and the materials for evolution are part of other animals. Zhou Xiang asked not to underestimate his beast. You just need to wait until it digests him. But suddenly, his pet spat out the enemy beast, which curled up in fear. His whole appearance indicated that the animal was too hard to eat. Lin Jie was surprised that Zhou Xiang understood the language of his beast. Suddenly, they began to look around and noticed that there were many more of these crystal beasts. Zhou Xiang immediately declared that his beast would not be able to cope with such a horde. Lin Jie ordered him to retreat, while Snegorochka began to freeze the monsters and the demon began to finish them off. The plump guy was sure that they would get rich, and his beast could keep a lot of crystals. But suddenly, Lin Jie asked to throw out everything that Zhou Xiang didn't like. The big mouth monster has a limited amount of items, and low-level materials are no longer needed. In the depths of the secret kingdom, there will be better materials. Then he will be able to take as much as he wants. Moving on, Lin Ji concluded that the good materials were found on larger creatures. A little further on, they noticed a floor strewn with crystals, and from underneath it, a crystal monster burst forth and grabbed the large-mouthed creature. Lin Jie immediately began to dodge the attacks, while the stone demon dealt with his opponents. These creatures will run away after taking just one hit, and they will have to defend themselves to avoid being attacked. Judging by their route of movement, it is better to prepare for an attack in advance, and as soon as they appear, you need to strike. But Zhou Xiang didn't listen to him and ran after the snake that had grabbed his beast, unaware of the attack from behind. At that very moment, the snake grabbed him too, and the boy, with tears in his eyes, asked Lin Jie to save him. It looked quite familiar, and the hero activated a shield around himself, which the snake hit. At that very second, the stone demon grabbed her from behind, and Snegorochka attacked with ice spikes. Zhou Xiang was surprised that the demon couldn't use the ghost form, not understanding why he bounced back. However, the beast continued to fight with several snakes at once, while the guy asked him to dodge, but Lin Jie ordered him to wait. As soon as the master gave the command, the demon turned into a ghostly form, and Snegorochka began to freeze all opponents at once. Zhou Xiang concluded that he had used the demon as bait to take them all down at once. The system announced that he had killed the giant stone snake and obtained 2 advanced earth crystals. He still had 28 years left, but at that moment, the stone snake dragged Zhou Xiang underground, where he discovered even more monsters. If he had known about this earlier, he would not have gone, but now they will definitely be eaten. But suddenly he raised his head and found Lin Jie counting the number of monsters, which came out to exactly 28. The plump guy knew that his friend would not abandon him, after which he loudly asked to be saved. Hugging his beast, Zhou Xiang watched as Snow Maiden directed ice spikes at her opponents. After that, the monsters began to die before his eyes, and Lin Jie received 1 high-quality item each. Although only 1 material dropped compared to the adult giant stone snake, these lower snakes are too agile. When Zhou Xiang came out, he immediately began to sincerely thank Lin Jie. But suddenly, a huge snake burst out from under the ground, throwing the plump guy and his beast into the air. The stone demon immediately rose into the air and picked up the two poor fellows. After this, Lin Jie decided that it was time for the demon and snow maiden to show the results of their training. Without wasting any time, Sneguruchka began to create ice chains, binding the enemy. Then a stone demon rushed towards him, attacking him like a meteor. After the victory, the stone spirit rose to the 3rd rank of the 9th level. Lin Jue earned an achievement by disturbing the giant snake's nest, earning 500 achievement points, 10 advanced earth element items, and 1 soul stone. Not only did he collect the materials, but his spirit also raised its level. If he used achievement points for experience, the conditions for the demon breakthrough would be met. Zhou Xiang immediately suggested digging through the treasures, since there were probably plenty of good things there. Suddenly, the hooded guy declared that it was an amazing battle, and Lin Jie was worthy of his attention. Looking at him, the guy immediately asked who he was and how he knew him. The stranger assumed that the guy had already heard about the symbiosis team. Zhou Xiang was surprised that this person was from the symbiosis, and Lin Jie did not expect that he knew anything about them. Just a couple of days ago, the leader gave him the task of investigating this organization. They often attack beast masters and steal their pets, and call themselves the protectors of beasts. As it turned out, it was a radical animal protection organization, a symbiosis team. Since the catastrophe that occurred several hundred years ago, wild animals have begun to penetrate this continent through rifts in the distorted space. Those who could be tamed were called pets, and those who could not were called wild animals. Human society not only clings to status and wealth that separate it from others, but it also divides species into 3 levels, which makes this world unfair. And the existence of the symbiosis team is called upon to destroy this injustice. Lin Jie is very talented, and by joining the symbiosis group, they will not only be able to activate his hidden power, but they will also release the natural abilities of both pets, allowing them to evolve into true kings. Lin Jie was surprised that they knew about the paths of evolution, but something was wrong, and this guy was just trying to stir up emotions. He's right, and their world is divided into the strong and the weak, but the guy categorically doesn't want to join any organization and become a puppet. Zhou Xiang asked them not to listen to him because he had checked everything. They were only luring gullible people, but in reality, they were wolves in sheep's clothing. If they had the strength, they would have gotten rid of the Beastmasters Association long ago. The stranger realized that they didn't believe him, and then grabbed the giant 2nd-rank 7th-level stone snake. Upon touching her, the snake immediately began to increase in size, releasing enormous power. The hooded man declared that liberating nature is the first step on the path of evolution. The snake's level rose by 3 levels at once, and the soul that could intoxicate beasts and pets was exactly the one Tan Yun spoke of. After this, he sent the snake into battle, which immediately rushed forward. The Snow Maiden reacted instantly and created an ice shield in front of herself. Zhou Xiang guessed that they were finished, and if he had known, he would have gone out to eat before leaving. Suddenly, the plump guy heard the snake say that it was in great pain, and he conveyed these words to Lin Jie. He spoke of equality, but in reality, he controlled the weak for his own benefit, which cannot be called equality. There was no point in running, so Sneguruchka had to freeze him until the stone demon found a weak spot. Now Sneguruchka is at the 4th rank of the 2nd level, and this demonic snake is at the 5th rank of the 1st level. Ice against earth, without elemental advantage, under normal conditions, is a defeat. Unless you get a breakthrough card, otherwise, it's just a fantasy to overcome an entire stage in battle and defeat an enemy. But the snake is not a true 5th rank. Such a soul penetrating the pet's potential will definitely cause a huge recoil. Lin Jie raised the level of the rock spirit to the 3rd rank of the 9th level, and it acquired the form of a ghost general. He jumped up and ran towards the snake at incredible speed. The ghost general form increases his speed by 300%, but his defense is reduced by 200, turning him into a glass vessel. At that very moment, Lin Jie decided to try synthesis by unlocking the joint technique. Ice Strike is a powerful attack skill that injects ice energy into the stone core, filling it with extreme cooling. It was an incredible skill that would cause an explosion when it hit an enemy. It seems that to unlock the art of synthesis, it is necessary not only for the Snow Maiden and the Stone Spirit to be of the same level, it is also necessary that they interact. Lin Jie ordered his pet to look for his weak spot, and he began to use all the skills available. However, the Stone Snake's attacks are too frequent, and Sneguruchka cannot constantly protect the Stone Demon. At this time, the guy in the hood asked them to give their best, and not to die just like that. Otherwise, he would be disappointed. Lin Jie realized that this guy was just playing with them, and it was unknown what else he was planning. He needed to quickly fight him and resolve the issue. Zhou Xiang and his beast must distract the stone snake, as his pet needs time to accumulate skills. The plump guy couldn't believe that such a task had fallen on his shoulders. But it was impossible otherwise, since they could literally die here. Not wanting to die, Zhou Xiang ordered his beast to attack the enemy with acid. A couple of seconds later, Snegurochka used an ice core, aiming it at the snake. As soon as the explosion rang out, Lin Jie managed to hide himself and Zhou Xiang in a protective barrier. When the fog cleared, they noticed the snake lying on the ground, saying that it was in terrible pain. Zhou Xiang relayed her words to Lin Jie again, deciding that they should help her. He hoped that his comrade would help her cope with the pain, but he saw no other way out than to end her suffering. He completed the achievement by defeating the demonic giant serpent, receiving 1,000 achievement points, 10 advanced earth essences, and 1 seed burst card. 2 more stones were obtained, and together with the previous condition, the materials for leveling up the stone demon were also completed. He also received additional rewards, soul recovery medicine, a seed explosion card, but for some reason, Lin Jie felt so heavy in his heart. The hooded stranger noticed the expression on his face and decided that the guy was angry. However, they, the Beastmasters, obtain materials by hunting ferocious animals. They do hunt ferocious beasts to obtain materials. Similarly, if they encounter an animal that cannot defeat the master, they will become its prey. The world is full of injustice and contradictions. But compared to that, Lin Jie hates people like them the most. They talk about equality and freedom, but at the same time, they use their ideas to intimidate others and exploit the weak. The synthesis team is just a group of hypocritical people who hide behind the guise of justice. The mysterious guy decided that their conversation had come to an end, but he thought that the girl with soul magic would agree to chat with him.